as we come to World Environment Day, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions that I've always been fascinated about. I've not really had a chance to ask you, even though I've known you for a long time. You're very involved with environmental charities. You founded the Earth Holders, you're one of the founders of Earth Holders, which is really an interfaith environment group, we see. And then obviously you're involved with Extinction Rebellion, which is very kind of active on the front line. I just wonder where your Buddhist philosophy, if it does it connect? Do you think it's partly has motivated you to be involved in these activities? And what you kind of, where you think it fits together, what your kind of hope is for where your work is. So first of all, do you see a connection between your Buddhist philosophy and the environment work that you're involved in?
Absolutely. I mean, the practice that I've always followed has been that connection with the earth, and almost motivated by that. One of my favourite sayings is, "We are the rocks dancing." You know, that our consciousness is part of the earth. Wow. We're just a manifestation of the earth in consciousness. So again, that interconnection is that we're a part of everything on the planet, and even wider. So we see the earth as our mother. You know, and almost as sometimes she's referred to as Mother Earth or Bodhisattva as a deity. So we love this beautiful blue planet and want to care for her and look after her, and she in her turn looks after us and cares for us. So it's embedded in our practice. So absolutely. So there was no conflict and no doubt between those two things. There are some world famous environmentalists such as Joanna Macy who follows the Buddhist tradition, who's been a campaigner for many years. So those two things more or less go hand in hand, even before we were that aware of the crisis in terms of the warming of the planet.
And tell me a little bit more about Earth Holders. And there'll be an opportunity, perhaps people watching this might want to get involved and maybe go on to, I think you have a Facebook page, do you?
Yeah.
Go on to the Earth Holders Facebook page and maybe find out more about what you do and get involved. Are there people involved in Earth Holders? Are most of them coming from a similar perspective, or is there a different mix of people's journeys? I'm interested to.
Okay, it was really interesting how it started. I mean, the first thing is we're Earth Holders Edinburgh. There are Earth Holders Bristol and Earth Holders London. And, the Earth Holders, the movement started through our own community mainly in America, and it's huge in America. So we decided that we would form an Earth Holders in Edinburgh. And what we really quickly found was that not only were people from our own community interested, but there were people from other Buddhist communities who were interested, and also Quakers were interested, and then it got wider afield than that. So we thought, well, why would we limit it just to our own community when there are lots of people around Edinburgh that have the same feelings about the planet and what's happening as we do? So we simply opened it up and became an interfaith Earth Holders community. And there's a lot of strength in that, because we get the different teachings and the different approaches to it, but coming from the same perspective. What we found in terms of XR was there seemed to be a real longing for people who were involved in XR for that spiritual connection. A lot of people were involved in the environmental actions because they felt this deep connection with the earth and the planet. But XR was focused more politically and more on direct action. So what we say in terms of Earth Holders is we take mindful action from Mother Earth. So the biggest action we took just before lockdown was we had a sit just off Princess Street by the National Gallery. There was about 50 of us that just sat in silence. It was called the Silent Rebellion. And in the midst of the trams and the buses and the shoppers, about 50 of us sat silently facing Princess Street. And then we did some mindful walking in that wonderful space by the side of the National Gallery there. So we didn't disrupt the traffic and we didn't cause any harm to anybody, but we certainly raised a lot of awareness, because people would come up and say, "What are you doing? Why are you doing this?" And we said, "Well, this is our way of demonstrating that we care about the planet, but in a mindful way. So, you know, it's really interesting that it met that need from a lot of people within XR. So in terms of people who came right across the board, from pensioners to young people and everybody in between, and people of different faiths. But I think the one thing that connects us in terms of Earth holders is we have some sort of spiritual connection with the planet, with the Earth, and so there is that strong connection.
So at the heart of it, there's a kind of mindfulness practice in Earth holders that everyone would be aware of, and maybe trying to live in the moment. Is there a kind of an understanding of the interconnectedness of everything?
Absolutely, I think there is. You know, but then both scientists and environmentalists understand the interconnectedness of all things. You know, if the bees die out, the chances are will die out. If you put chemicals in the planet, you know, they end up in us. You know, I mean, if you look at plastics, you know, that's been a big concern for people. When plastics degrade, they go into microplastics, these tiny little balls of plastic, microplastics. They've got into the watercourse, they've then got into the land, they've then got into the animals we eat, and they're now in us. You know, if we think that we're separate, you just follow that course of plastics that are now actually in us. You know, human beings now have microplastics in us. You know, if you throw plastic away in the sea, it doesn't vanish. You know, eventually it comes back and enters everything. So there is a scientific interconnection, never mind a spiritual interconnection. You know, if we pollute the seas, we pollute the water, we pollute the air that we breathe, we can't survive without water and air. So, you know, it's wonderful. These two things come together. The belief that we are interconnected, and the science says exactly the same thing. We are interconnected. So, yeah, you know, if we don't look after the planet, we really don't look after ourselves.
I mean, it's interesting because when I think about what you know, Buddhism and other Eastern traditions have to perhaps be part of the solution to the environmental problem, often think of the Eastern traditional outlook. I think Hinduism would also accept that interconnectedness of everything, and I know other Eastern traditions would as well. I think there may be more of an argument within some other traditions whether everything is interconnected in that way, and some theology may look at more of a separation and a responsibility in stewardship and management, which is quite interesting because that's something that you've taught me, which is actually that role which for some people it has been seen as a positive thing. You know, be responsible as a manager. From your perspective, I think maybe you could say something like that. It can be seen as a negative because it's making that separation between us and other forms of life.
I mean, one of the teachings says that, you know, the Buddha himself is made up of non-Buddhist elements. The Buddha was made up of lots of other things that were not the Buddha, and we're made up of lots of elements that are not me. You know, there's lots of non-Bill elements in me. So one of the non-Bill elements in me is the Buddha, and one of the non-Buddha elements in him is me. You know, so you know that's how we perceive the world. That we have that interconnectivity. Which, as I say, you know, is often reflected by science. But I have, you know, I've been involved in interfaith. I have a very open mind in terms of other faiths, and you know, I think quite often my own teacher would reflect to say that that God is in everyone. You know, and this that we live is the kingdom of God. So that interconnectedness, you know, how I make sense of other religions is to say not only you know, are we interconnected in every way, but God is in all of us and in all things. So there isn't a vast difference in terms of our beliefs in that sense, you know. So, yeah.
Everything is interconnected, including the religions, in a sense. Gandhi, I think, used to have the teaching that we're all branches of the one tree. It's very interesting. So what is your kind of hope from, well, first of all, Earth holders, what's the, do you think is the main kind of aim of of Earth holders? What do you want to see happening through that group? Is it about raising awareness, or is there something else connected to it?
It's about raising awareness, but it's also about changing attitudes and having a sense of what the future is. One of the things we often question is, what sort of future do you want? And one of the things that's happened with the lockdown is we've stopped. And when we've stopped, the skies are cleared, the pollution's lessened, the roads have quietened. You know, we can show that we can actually do a lot of things that will change the impact that we're having on the planet. Do we just go back to the way we were without thinking about it? Or do we recognise that this is a chance to actually stop and think, what sort of world do we want? Do we want a world without all the different species, the wonderful, you know, amazing amount of life that there is on this planet is reducing all the time? You know, we're in this period of extinction, mass extinction. Is that what we want? You know, do we want to bring our children up in an environment with no trees and all concrete? You know, do we want to eat, you know, protein tablets, or do we want to eat fresh, you know, tomatoes that we pick off the vine? You know, what do we want from life? And most people would say, you know, they want a natural environment that they want to bring their children up in. But we don't seem to be capable of having that vision and working towards that vision. So Earth holders will be about raising that consciousness, but also saying, what sort of world do you want to live in? At the moment, I mean, we're worried about going into a recession. A recession means we don't grow. Actually, we need not to grow. That's another different mindset. You know, that we've got locked into the fact that we've got to grow all the time, that if we don't grow, we go into recession. If recession means poverty and unemployment, that's a different matter. But we've got to start thinking about a world that's sustainable and not forever growing and not forever using resources. So it's about education, it's about changing mindset and about awareness, about the way we live, and trying to go back to live in harmony. I think one of the things that's done so much damage is we've lost that sense of connection with the earth, that we actually are a part of the earth. Just yesterday I was cycling and I saw masses and masses of litter from the sort of the unlocking parties that have been happening, you know, and people just leave plastic and litter and walk away, and they don't seem to think that there's any connection between leaving all that litter and stuff and themselves and the planet. But of course there is. Somebody's got to dispose of it. Somebody's got to tidy it up.
It's crazy.
So what happened to that respect for our environment? You know, that puzzles me sometimes.
It's depressing. You would think in this day and age, with all the, you know, awareness around it, that people would think twice about that. It's just, and in terms of Extinction Rebellion, where does that fit in the scheme of things? What the ultimate aim? What's the ultimate aim, do you think, of the Extinction Rebellion? Do they think that they are going to be able to change?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, sadly, in some ways, what Extinction Rebellion believes is the political process isn't working, and therefore it's down to individuals to take some control. And that's a sad situation, because I'd much rather be in the position that government was taking this on, but XR have the view that the government just isn't acting quick enough and that we're not changing fast enough. And the science is backing that up, unfortunately, that we're just not, you know, we've got lots of promises in terms of what we're going to do, but we're just not getting there quick enough. So XR is about, what I like to think is we're supporting our politicians to make change, and really difficult changes.
Right.
If you talk about not growing the economy, you know, that's alien to so many of our politicians, alien to us maybe, but so XR is about putting pressure on, but also supporting people to make these difficult changes. And trying to say as well that it's not all about sacrifice. You know, that if we give up a few foreign holidays and stop flying, maybe there are other advantages.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's not all about giving up and not having and so forth.
It's quite interesting to hear the kind of positive way that you're talking about the role of Extinction Rebellion is actually to support and work with governments, whereas some people would almost see them as these kind of revolutionaries who are coming along, and sometimes the press will put a negative spin on what they're trying to do, without maybe thinking about what the positive aims of their work.
Yeah. XR do have a political wing, and I've been part of that, and that's about, they drafted a private members bill, for instance, so it's not all about being against government, it's wherever we can, working, with government and working with world governments as well. So yeah, it's not a, I don't think anybody wants conflict. I think what we want is resolution. I think, we want to get on with the actions we need to take to reduce the warming of the planet and the impact that that's going to have, and however we do that. I know that sometimes XR causes real hardship, but that's not our intention. And I think, we consider very carefully what sort of direct action we're taking. But back to Earth holders, I suppose that, we're a group of people associated with XR that have decided to do things in a mindful way. So our way of doing it was sitting silently on Princess Street. So there are different ways to bring awareness to the population that things need to change.
Great.